I think we're ready to get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Rutherford, and I am the President and CEO of the Montana Community Foundation. And I'd like to say thank you for joining us, first of all. We'll start out with a couple little housekeeping items. If you could please make sure your mute button is on, if that's possible. We're going to have 3 speakers this morning, followed by a question and answer period. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. Our moderator will make sure that we get those covered either throughout the presentation or at the end. We're happy to have you joining us. Today, I'm pleased to announce the creation of the Snowbird Fund at the Montana Community Foundation. This new fund will support Montana Native families as they search for their missing loved ones in urban and rural and reservation communities across our state. This fund was created in response to the missing and murdered Indigenous persons crisis occurring, which has devastated families and communities. Montana is 5th on the list of the most murdered and missing Indigenous women cases across the United States. This is a complicated issue that many people are paying attention to and working on and trying to figure out. With this new fund, philanthropy is playing a small but supportive part in helping families who are searching desperately for their loved ones. One of the most immediate ways that we can provide direct support to those family members is through this financial fund at the Community Foundation as they're facing this terrible crisis and emergency. The goal of the Snowbird Fund is to quickly mobilize financial resources to help families without making it complicated or onerous from the perspective of applying for or reporting on these funds. We're going to get these dollars out immediately to those family members. This fund is available for new missing cases, and it's a modest level of support that will go directly to those families for whatever they decide they need in this time, whether that's printing flyers, buying a tank of gas, meals as they travel, hotels, metal detectors, drones, whatever they need. These funds are available now, and we hope that they're going to be available throughout the year and for, frankly, many years to come. Like many of our funds, this one came to us from the insight and generosity of a donor, Whitney Williams, who you'll hear from in a minute here. This fund was started with just over $50,000, and there's a few people who've contributed to it. Our hope is that over time, people who are interested in this work will join in contributing to this fund. To be perfectly honest, we're figuring this out. You know, the Community Foundation has been around for 33 years supporting Montana and Montana communities. We've never done anything like this before. We don't know of anyone else in Montana who's doing this. And frankly, we can't find anyone across the United States who's doing anything like this. It's only because of Whitney's generosity and a remarkable committee that has come together to thoughtfully figure out how we use this fund to most immediately and effectively help families. Whitney, along with Anna Whiting-Sorrell, Marilyn Zimmerman, and Ivan Macdonald, and other representatives from Indian country have guided this fund and how we can help our friends and neighbors here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ivan and ask Ivan to say a few words. I'm going to mute myself. So Ivan, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ivan Macdonald. I am a member of the Blackfeet tribe. I'm also a filmmaker and MMIW, MMIP advocate. My sister and I, for probably the last 4 to 5 years, have been documenting the stories of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and people crisis across the state of Montana. We have our own personal history. We are related to Ashley Loring Heavy Runner, and have a few other family members who have fallen under the umbrella of MMIW, MMIP. I'm really honored to be here today, to be a part of the fund as someone who will be helping the fund in the future review applications for funds, And I initially met Whitney Williams about 2 to 3 years ago in relation to the MMIW, MMIP work I was doing. Um, and trying actually to start a fundraiser or some sort of fund for families. And Whitney was one of our first gracious donors for that. And when she reapproached us a few years later about this project she was starting, I know I was very excited. And and all of the work my sister and I have done across um, urban, rural, tribal, non-tribal communities. We found that resource allocation is something that's incredibly important for families. 9 times out of 10, I would say sometimes 99% of the time, families are the ones heading up these searches themselves. I've been on numerous searches with families for their various loved ones, Jermaine Charlo, Ashley Loring, and it's always the case where families, a lot of the times, it's always the case where families are organizing themselves. And something like this fund is incredibly important because it allows families to get that early funding at the very start of their search. Even to this day, I still see numerous missing persons posters shared via social media of young girls, of young men, and this is incredibly timely and incredibly needed opportunity for people to hopefully some way address this crisis. The crisis is multifaceted, multidimensional, and of course, this covers a part of that. And I hope to see what the fund can grow to, and as it supports more families and communities within Indian country as they search for their loved ones. I'm just so excited for the future of what this fund may bring. And I'm very honored to introduce Whitney Williams, who helped, um, this was the brainchild of, and very excited to get the press conference underway.
Thank you, Ivan, so much, and Mary, and just really pleased to have so many people join us today. So let me really just start by thanking the family members who shared their stories with me and really brought light to this issue, which, as Mary says, spans the country, but it's particularly acute in Montana. And I'm just so pleased that this fund has come to life. Thanks to my team and the volunteers who really did help make this a reality. And now, as Ivan says, we can get to work directly helping Native families in Montana as they search for their missing loved ones. I turned to the Montana Community Foundation to help me develop this fund and to turn my passion for the issue into a really tangible way to directly support families and communities. And so thanks to the foundation for your willingness to take on this first of its kind fund. The name Snowbird is a reference to a Blackfeet name, and Ivan, I'm going to try to get this right, Istotsitsi, which I was honored to receive. This name in 1992 was given to me by the Blackfeet Community College instructor, Marvin Weatherwax Sr. Montana families need our help. In a small way, we're looking to fill a little bit of a gap here and simply help families and friends as they're searching for their loved ones. I'm proud to have come from a family who for generations worked in and alongside Indian country, and I'm fortunate to follow in their footsteps. My grandpa Hannah, who was the mayor of Butte, Montana, then ran the Economic Development Agency for President Johnson, and he worked really hard to bring economic opportunities to Indian country, resulting in projects like the Blackfeet Pencil Factory. He was very proud of that work. He also was the proud champion of the horseshoe pitching contest in Browning one year, only once, by the way. My mom, Carol, when she was both minority leader and majority leader of the state Senate, worked with colleagues to help rename all geographic sites, nearly 100 of them, across Montana that were named squaw, a word that's deeply offensive. And then my dad, when he was Montana's congressman, always looked out for Native folks in a variety of ways, and he served as the lead member of Congress, ensuring tribally controlled community colleges received funding so they could continue to expand. He also led the effort to rename Custer's Last Stand to Battle of the Little Bighorn, as it should be. So my family inspired me. And ultimately I got a degree at the University of Montana in Native American Studies and did help start the first native language program at the university when I was in my 20s, all those years ago. Last year I ran for governor, and I did so because I believe that government can and should do better by its citizens, and that government should in fact see each one of us as equal contributors and participants in this state and in this country. And I'm keenly aware that many of our neighbors are in fact treated differently, invisible, or left behind altogether. And I believe that our big, beautiful state can and should do a whole lot better than that. So Grace Bulltail lost her 18-year-old niece, Kaisera Stops Pretty Places. And she reached out to me on Facebook and asked me during the campaign what I was going to do to help this from happening again. So I picked up the phone and I called Grace, and then I talked to Cheryl Horn, who's Selena Not Afraid's auntie. And they both shared with me, and they taught me a lot about this issue. And as an aunt myself, I cannot imagine anything more devastating than losing a niece or a nephew. And despite these women's advocacy and outreach and persistence to get institutions to help them find their nieces, they had to mostly go it alone and conduct their own searches with family and friends. Montanans know that's not right. So goodness knows this fund isn't going to solve the problem, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. The state and legislatures are making progress on addressing some of the systemic problems in addressing the issue, and that's good. But families told me they need immediate help and financial aid in their searches. And that's what this fund is for. Snowbird will alleviate some immediate needs and continue to bring light to this very dark epidemic. Today, Montana is under a whole lot of ice and snow. I think all of us across this state are in this storm. And when you drive down the road and you see a car in the ditch, you never see just one car, you always see two. Because someone stopped, someone pulled over to help their neighbor. Because that is who we are as Montanans. We help each other. And this fund, I believe, is a representation of the best of all of us. So I hope folks will join us to learn more and to get involved. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Ivan, and thank you, Whitney. In a second, we're going to turn it over to questions. Really what we're hoping you can help us with is getting the word out. We want family members to know that this fund is available. We want folks to know that they can go right to our website and apply for funding. If they want to donate, any of you want to donate, we can take gifts there as well. But we want to get these dollars out to these families who are searching for family members. So please help us share the word. We're going to continue to do our best to get this word out. You can learn more about the fund itself, as well as this terrible issue in our state through a lot of links on our website at mtcf.org. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Lombardi, who is going to be our moderator for the rest of our time together. So Bill.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Ivan. And thank you, Whitney. Good morning, everybody. And thank you for the media and other guests that have gotten on here this morning. So this sounds like a great program, and I've already got some questions I want to direct to you all. Montana has a few grant programs for law enforcement working on missing person cases. Is this the first direct aid to families initiating searches? And I guess I would ask.
Mary, do you,
Yeah.
maybe I'll start, and then you can fill in, and Ivan as well, of course. You know, Bill, when I started sort of looking at this issue much more intently this summer, and had incredible help from two extraordinary young people, who I want to thank, Brevin Holiday and Rennie Jang, who are incredible young interns who did a lot of conversations with family members across tribes, across the state, to try to understand what some of the needs were. And near as we could tell, there was no fund, and we now have found that there isn't any fund in the state. So this is the first of its kind. And in fact, we don't think there's a fund like this anywhere in the United States, and would love to know more so we could learn from them if there is. But this is the only fund in Montana that's supporting family members in this way.
And Mary and Ivan, if you want to respond to.
I'd say we're actively trying to identify others. And as Whitney said, we haven't found anyone. You know, we reached out to some of our national organizations. I've reached out to colleagues in Alaska to see, because they too face this horrible situation, to see what they're aware of. And no one has identified any other funds. So we think it's the only one at this point.
Yeah, with some of the organizations I've worked with, such as MMIW USA in Oregon and the Sovereign Bodies Institute, recently located in Humboldt and soon to be relocated to Tucson, Arizona. Even then, they work on a lot of advocacy. They do fund families directly, but I can't think of anything that's directly a fund related just to funding families. A lot of those other ones are kind of resource support and other kind of support, but I can't think of a single organization or foundation that is directly funding just families.
Thank you. Here's another question. What do you expect will be the average or range of grant awards? Is there a limit on awards, and what's the average range going to be?
Well, one of the things that I mentioned early on is we're figuring this out, and thanks to this committee and their involvement, we're going to start with an amount of $500 that's going to go directly to those family members. I don't know what the range will be, and over time that might change, but for now we're going to start with a $500 level.
And Bill, I might just say, you know, I'm just really grateful to Grace and Cheryl. I mentioned them earlier, these two aunties who lost their nieces. You know, when we talked to them about the types of things that they needed, you know, it was, as Mary pointed out at the beginning, you know, very basic things. They needed, you know, wanted to be able to provide gas money, you know, to family members. They wanted to be able to provide, you know, hotel rooms for family members, or bus tickets. In some cases, you know, Cheryl told us that the amount of time is, you know, we all know Montana is a huge state, you know, there's a lot of ground to cover. And so Cheryl told us how helpful it would have been in their case, you know, had they had access to a drone. So we think that it's going to be for items like that.
And I'll direct this to all three of you, but especially to Ivan, since he's on the review committee. I think you have 3 members of that committee. How many grants is MCF hoping to distribute per year? Do you have any idea on that, Ivan or Mary?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say it's probably on a need basis. As I mentioned, you know, a lot of the times these young people, from what I see, you know, they go missing. There's immediate support for help searching. A lot of the times families do know sometimes where they go. I'm thinking of a particular case earlier this year, probably started around New Year's, where a young girl from Fort Peck ended up in Billings, and her family was searching for her and was eventually able to recover her. But, you know, I feel that as those cases kind of come and go, you know, it could be numerous cases. And I think that's kind of the hope with the initial start of the fund, that there will be continued support and donation to the fund to kind of keep that need basis regular for that, you know, are searching.
And I just add, Bill, you know, we at the Community Foundation, we are ready to respond as quickly as we possibly can. We want to make this process as simple as possible, and the committee's committed to that as well. And so we will expedite these sorts of getting these funds out the door as quickly as we possibly can.
Great. Here's a technical question. And will recipients need to pay taxes on the grant? And what?
No. Yeah, we've worked very closely with the Council on Foundations and other legal organizations that we're members of. And because these are emergency funds, we'll be able to get those funds out, and people will not be taxed on these funds.
Great. can you talk about how families access the funds? If they were searching, do they go to a website, make a call? What are the fundamentals of getting money?
Yeah. Yes, if they go directly to our website, which is mtcf.org, for the next few weeks, because this is news hot off the press, we're going to have this right at front and center on our website. So they'll see the Snowbird Fund. And if for some reason they go to the website and they don't see that, they just type it simply into the search bar. And there's great information there in terms of the fund itself, how they apply, if they have questions, if they're concerned, if they're not sure how to proceed, live person's phone number, name and phone number to call Jessica and our team, who will help them through this process. Absolutely.
Great. And question, when did the fund officially become available online? Is it available right now?
It's available right now. Yes.
And when did it start? Was it today or yesterday or earlier?
Yeah, well, we actually received, we've been working with Whitney for a while, and we wanted to make sure we had all the I's dotted and T's crossed before we announced it. So we haven't, I guess today is the day that we're launching this fund.
Great. Here's a question for Whitney, kind of a political question. I was curious if she is planning to run for office again in Montana. And is this separate from her William Works nonprofit?
Yeah, so the last question first, Williams Works. So Williams Works is a for-profit, actually, company. And this is separate. This is a volunteer activity for me and for members of my team who participated in it. So, so yes, this is a sort of standalone fund at the Montana Community Foundation now, and just, some of our team provides some volunteer support, including me. And I don't know whether I'll run for office again. I got some really good advice years ago from one of my mentors, Sylvia Burwell, who said, you don't know your future self, which I thought was a good reminder at times like this. I don't intend to run again, but if I'm called to do it like I was last time, I'll certainly consider it.
Great. Another question here. If families need to, can they apply for more money? I mean, are they limited to one application or more than one application?
Ivan, do you want to jump in before I say anything? I think the way the committee, do you want to speak or?
Yeah, no, that's something we've definitely talked about in the planning stages of, oftentimes, I'm thinking of particularly, with someone like Ashley, whose family really searches for her, and I know that they'll be searching for her once the weather gets better. I know that we've talked about, that ability to support families, hopefully a couple times. I don't know if we've actually set like a cap amount officially on the amount that families are able to draw, but I think that that's a very important discussion we've had of, oftentimes knowing that, and I think of someone, like some of the cases where, sadly, these individuals may go missing a few times. And, that's just kind of the reality of this. And, I think that supporting families when and if ever they need this fund is super important.
And just a question I have, you have 3 members of the review committee, and can you name those people, Ivan, and then how this review committee might change over time as you see how the application of funds works?
Yeah, so there's Marilyn Zimmerman Bruger, who is at the University of Montana, and Anna Whiting Sorrell, who is with the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, and those are sort of both leaders within Indian country.
And do you think the application might change as you move along here, and I guess Mary too, as you adjust, and Whitney, as you see different needs? And Mary, you said this is something new for you all, so I think talking about just the novelty of this exercise.
Sure. I think it's fair to say that we are going to be responsive and respectful of what the committee recommends for the guidelines for this fund, and also paying attention to what changes in society and what do the families need. what we envision today might not be what they need 2 or 3 or 5 years from now. And so we want to be flexible enough to be responsive. So I'd say, yes, this is a starting point, but it likely will be adjusting over time.
Mhm. And then a quick clarification for Whitney. Are you currently still living in Montana? Thank you. And is it cold where you are?
Oh yes, I'm in Missoula and it's very cold. Seamus, my new puppy, and I went out for a run this morning, and it was not too cold for him. It was too cold for me.
Here's another question: does a missing person have to be reported to law enforcement to qualify?
Ivan, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily something we've actively discussed. I can think of a few instances. So, I think that's kind of a misconception. And I know this comes directly from the Montana Missing Persons Clearinghouse, which is under the Department of Justice, that there's some 24-hour waiting period you need to
Mhm.
list someone as a missing person. And, I think that that's a confusion that I have seen within Indian country of families. When someone goes missing, they're like, okay, can we list them as a missing person or not? I know that I don't know if we've discussed that exactly within the fund, but I do know that might be a future discussion. But up to my knowledge, I don't know if that's something that's kind of like a set thing, because a lot of the times I do know that I'm thinking of a few particular cases we've worked with where families weren't really able to file a missing persons report to a few days after, but were actively within a search within that time frame. And so, yeah.
Okay, I think I'm asking for any other questions. I think I don't see any more questions in the chat box, but then we're running up on about a half an hour. So if there are no other questions, I'll turn it back to Mary to wrap up here, and thank Ivan and Whitney for this, and thank the media and our other participants for getting on here. And I know Grace Bulltail's on too, so thank you, Grace, for all of your help. Okay, here's a quick question. Sorry about that. Is there a press release? Yes, there is a press release, and it just came out from the Montana Community Foundation. I think that can be found on their website too. Teal Whitaker is the contact person for that. And can we use the art on the website for web posts or for stories? Mary, Whitney?
Yeah, can I just say, I'm just so pleased these two young Native women from Salish community developed this beautiful logo for us, and we have tagged them on social media. So just please tag them as well to recognize them for their art, but you certainly can use it.
Great. So that's all I have. So I'll turn it back to Mary to.
Great. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Whitney, thank you for this incredible gift and your leadership and guidance and your kindness and generosity. Ivan, thank you so much for helping on this committee. Your wisdom brings so much to enrich this work. Thank you. We're grateful to have all of you here today. Please follow up with questions that you might have. You can find contact information on our website. There's lots of information there to share about the fund, press release, etc. Please help us get this word out, and thank you again for joining us, and have a great day, and stay warm, everyone.